we're talking about space and place in storytelling, particularly trans and queer storytelling. So I can start a little bit about me. My name's Basil Soper. I'm a Southern man of trans experience, a multidisciplinary writer, director, and photographer. I grew up in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I am a proud first generation high school and college graduate. I have a BA in creative writing from the New School, an MA in experimental humanities and social engagement from NYU, and I got my associates at AB Tech, which I'm very grateful for because it allowed me to do everything else, I feel like. A lot of my creative work is been published in publications like Harper's Bazaar, Into, Refinery 29, and Them. I'm the founder of Transilient, which we'll definitely talk more in the following slides about. And creative work doesn't always pay the best, so I've been a storyteller in a few different roles. Currently, I work at Justice System Partners, which is an organization that focuses on alternatives to incarceration and carceral supervision. I'm the lead storyteller and press manager there. I worked at NDWA, which is as a senior digital campaign manager, which is an organization for nannies, house cleaners, and home care workers. I worked at Sage, which is an LGBTQ elder org, and I was on a show called Calling BS. Had 2 seasons. I was a producer and a researcher, and the show looked at kind of um, corporations and their mission statements and whether or not they lived up to them. And as you can probably imagine, many did not. I say all of this because I work across many movements. A lot of my work is definitely advocacy based, and yet I fancy myself as like a writer first and foremost, and someone who loves the tradition of Southern storytelling. And so, yeah, my work has just kind of tumbled out in different ways, but my largest body of work has definitely been with Transilient. So yeah, Transilient was a project that I'm sorry, I'm kind of moving bars out of the way. I started as a photo project that challenged the one-dimensional narrative that was really seen particularly in the mainstream media at this time, which particularly looked at like our trauma, the pain we experienced, and medical transition stories. Through Transilient, I traveled to 36 states and I interviewed about 130 participants. And yeah, the whole purpose of it was to show the world that we're more than trans. I believed that if I could highlight the multifaceted parts of ourselves, um, that the rest of the world would see themselves in us. And yeah, so we're here to talk about place and space kind of as like a foundational framework for a lot of the work that I've done, but I think can show up in many bodies of work. I'm not like a scholar or anything on this, so it's kind of like the idea of place and space and the definitions are kind of made by me right now. But basically, place is the physicality, the room or the town or the home or wherever you're in, and space is the container. It's particularly something that has to do with time, cultural moments, and your space and like your intention moving forward with a project. I think space is kind of like a universal experience for many people. So like even if we're not directly affected by it, it's still kind of on the timeline. And it influences the work and how we see things and how we create things, particularly in storytelling and documentary work. And Transilient kind of always explored space and place because they're not just physical locations, it's also like an emotional and political place and landscape, and it helps people understand themselves and each other more. It allows people to relate to each other a bit more. And yeah, so when creating Transilient, the space that was I was in and that a lot of the United States was on the precipice of the first Trump administration. So like I started the project in May 2016. Things were really changing very rapidly. If y'all can even think back to that time, it was such a different country than we live in today. But I believed he could win. A lot of people around me didn't, and I felt pulled to move quickly with trying to shift the narrative about trans folks. Um, Also, I have personal experience as an organizer. So in Asheville, I ran a group called Just Us for All for about 5 years. Sometimes I would speak to the media and I'd have like interesting experiences. I can say one time a reporter showed up to my place and was doing an interview with me, and I was dating a cis woman at the time. And the reporter looked at her and was like, you're so pretty. Like, why would you date a trans person? And so it was just kind of this moment of like really understanding who's telling our stories. I mean, like I kind of already understood it, but I don't think until that moment did something click. After being an organizer in North Carolina, having deep ties to the Carolinas and transitioning in North Carolina, HB2 had passed. And most of you are aware of what HB2 is, but it was the first anti-trans bathroom bill of its kind. It happened in North Carolina behind closed doors at night. And I was also kind of moving in this place in the world where like I had left the South for a couple of months and interned in New York and experienced this like very narrow understanding about the South for really the first time. And I wanted to show the world that, or at least the country, that we exist all over the place, and it's different depending on where we live. And real quick, I think space, or the way that I define it, could also include something that's known as studium. Um, Folks here have maybe read Camera Lucida by Roland Barthes, but like basically, like studium and punctum are things that happen after a work is created and presented. Studium's kind of what draws you in, but it also like it shows symbols of social and cultural and historical clues. And punctum is very subjective. So let's say you read a poem and there's a line in it about like, I don't know, Mountain Dew in a water park, but you have a very visceral memory of Mountain Dew in a water park. It's going to change the poem for you, and it's going to change that line, maybe even your relationship with the poet. So these are things that kind of happen after, so they're like further away than what I'm talking about, but just that I feel like studium kind of comes close to my idea of space. Um, yeah, so I made a few choices around place and space to begin the project. I wanted to drive around and do interviews in person, and that was to highlight regional visibility of place. And I wanted to also make the people who I was interviewing incredibly comfortable and feel safe with me, particularly as a lot of folks who I was interviewing, didn't have media training, or maybe have never spoken about their transition to a stranger, let alone something that was going to be published and like, online for the world to see. So I really wanted to give them a lot of control of like where we did it, when we did it, how it happened, how much information they gave me. At the time, I was just recording with a voice recorder and shooting photos after I sat with people for like an hour or two. And of course, locations contribute to the mood, the emotional resonance, but really importantly, it gives credibility to a narrative. Um, Space. Part of the space was I chose photography, yes, because that was my first artistic practice beyond writing. But it was very intentional that I created a space around the work that didn't allow people to like transvestigate. I didn't use people's voice and I didn't use pronouns, so people couldn't make assumptions. You would see their name and where they were located and the story that they wanted to share with me. And this is because had I there's nothing wrong with like using pronouns or using people's voices, but this particular body of work, I wanted to make sure people couldn't detract from the story or the humanity of the person in the photo. Um, and another like space or container around a lot of this work was I had to kind of break into the media because the whole purpose of it was to change the narrative of the media. So I did use my personal story as well as the road trips we would take to catch the eye of media outlets, and it was successful. We were in BuzzFeed. We were on the cover of an Austrian feminist magazine called Anschlag, among other publications. And so Transilient, the project that it was, ran from 2016 to 2020. COVID hit, obviously, which changed a lot of things in the world. I started grad school and kind of have been working and figuring out how I want to move and do things next in the world. Um, and so Transilient today is a trans-led media collective and teaching organization that shares honest stories of trans, non-binary, and queer people, especially those marginalized by regional identity, race, or disability, through collaboration, care, and humility, while developing the leadership and storytelling skills of community artists, particularly trans people in Western North Carolina. And our next project is a full-length documentary film called Fixin' This Day. So Fixin' This Day is in development. I actually filmed a little bit of Brennan at Pride. We were kind of creating a reel for the film for fundraising purposes and kind of getting folks to come together and like see how we work together. And Asheville was our first shooting, and then I had my full team come together in Memphis. And this is a photo from Memphis where you can see the two people in the front. We have Qualvarius and Maria. They're like our profiles in Memphis. Then you see me kind of walking odd, and our producer, Michaela. Um, but this film is really about why people stay in the South, and it's through the lens of queer and trans existence in the South. Um, to not only change the way people perceive the South as a whole, but to also like give credit and room and voice to um, people who are kind of driving progress in the region and are often overlooked. So the place in the Southeast is Memphis and Asheville. Those are our two like main storylines. We'll go to other places in the South as well. And part of the place is the South faces judgment from other regions and an intensifying climate crisis. And while Memphis and Asheville are really different, they're also pretty similar. So they're different historically. You know, Memphis is historically a Black city with things like soul music and like the blues coming out of it. Asheville is historically a traditional craft area. It's a part of Appalachian culture. Um, but both places share a really strong sense of identity. Like the cities know who they are and the people in them and have like shared customs. There's a large LGBTQ community in both places, and there's also great mutual aid networks in both places. Um, Asheville experienced Hurricane Helene, which left a lot of damage, and people are still kind of working through that. And right now in Memphis, there's a data center that's poisoning South Memphis. And the data center is owned by Elon Musk, and people, particularly queer people like Quilvarius, are kind of having to deal with being queer in the South and everything we're facing right now, but also fight back against something like a data center. Um, So the space, it's a lot more layered than it was in 2016. You know, trans and queer communities are living a very politically divided moment in our country. Fascism is like very clear and open. Anti-LGBTQ legislation and harmful rhetoric and media coverage are even stronger than they were in 2016.
Today, I'll pray to the rivers, tell them they ought not rise, and if they rise, then tomorrow I'll pray to my neighbors, tell them please make it out alive, and if they don't survive, then on Saturday.
Okay, I should say that I'll let this video play and then I'll talk. This is more footage that we got in Asheville recently.
Then tomorrow I'll pray to my neighbors, tell them please make it out alive, and if they don't survive, then on Saturday I'll pray to what's left, tell them we'll see the other side. As I remember the smell, it smelled just like this, and my mind plays back the sound, helicopters touching down, and I remake the taste, propane, coffee, frozen meat, tomato paste, and retrace my steps, first phone call on the hilltop, numbers scrawled in prep. I get that sinking, guilty feeling, missing what we had, my grievances for community, disaster made us build. My tears were not for tragedy, but for how we all showed up. arms sore from schlepping water. I still feel Julia's hands cupped around my face. I'm happy you're alive. I feel Jonah's arms around me, the one we thought had died. I remember getting word that Maddie had survived. I sang myself to songs while cooking dinner for my friends. The rough times make us stronger, but I hope they stay away. Thank you. Yeah. I didn't even slip.
The presentation kind of made it echoey, but that was a little bit of footage that we got around Helene when we were in Asheville. And what's different from Transilient then and now is I have to go a little bit deeper, particularly with place and space storytelling, because, when looking at cities and a region, it's got to be clear that they're different in the same region, but the region's facing a lot of the same issues. Previously, the work I did happened in shorter stints. I would sit with someone for 2 hours, take their photo, we would stay in touch. But right now, I'm building relationships and friendships with the places and the subjects. And I'm working with a larger, more collaborative crew. And directing film and photography are different, but are similar in some ways. I think photography for me was faster and you could take more risks, and I have to be a little slower with film and like setting up scenes and kind of plotting out production and what that's going to look like. And there's definitely way more layers in this story than there was in the original.
Today, I'll pray to the rivers.
So that's everything. So we can open a Q&A, and or you can ask me about my work, or if you have work you want to workshop or talk about, we can do that as well.
Thank you so much, Basil. This was absolutely fascinating, and I am really grateful that stories are being shared in an intentional way. And I appreciate that the filming process also introduces more layers to storytelling, especially during such a complex moment in space and place. I have a few questions in regards to the presentation and your work, and also if anybody has questions, please feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, or put the questions in the chat. But one question is, do you have um, do you have any advice for people who are looking to start documentary work?
Yeah, I think I think funding is really important and also incredibly hard to get. I think it's even harder to get today under the administration that we're living, particularly with the content that we're going to want to talk about most likely. But I think really fleshing out like a topic summary about your work and a log line and kind of putting it out there to get funding in any way. For me, this time around, I reached out to Tomboy X, which is an underwear company. So they like gave us some funding and we shot a video at a moat in Asheville and gave away like binders and gender affirming underwear and stuff. So there are ways you can reach out. You can also try to do some kind of local fundraisers, even just to get a little bit of cash, because I think it helps for a few things. One, with like paying people who you want to work with. Two, if an emergency happens, you never know. I think like having a safety plan is always really needed. And then, yeah, creating a reel first. So, that's what I got the funds for, was to create a reel. And now I'm going to use that to fund further. But I think, one thing about my work is it's always been skill sharing. Like I really believe I didn't come from a background of having film or photography. I'm self-taught in those ways. And like, um, you know, I feel like anyone can do it if they have a good eye and they're really committed to it, and you can collaborate well. I think that's really important. Um, Michaela, the producer, is a good friend of mine. I really needed someone I could trust because this is such a big project, and someone who also kind of bosses me around and I'm okay with it and keeps us on time. And I really think like working with people you trust, but also being able to be easy to work with for the most part and able to collaborate with others and building a team around you first that you feel safe with. So getting some funds and working with people you like.
I was wondering before I have Whisper ask her question, what is the goal for your fundraising for this project? And then that's my last question right
So for the development process through post production is about $180,000.
now. Okay, thank you so much. Let me make a note. All right, and then Whisper and Alia and Keegan are next.
I want to apologize again for being late because this question may have already been answered earlier. Um, but you said you, I guess, kind of, sorry, are doing or did do two projects. One was first through the medium of photography, and now the use of video. Is this still something that you're creating, or do you have something that you created that is already shareable?
Yeah, so Fixin' to Stay is like under Transilient. So Transilient was started as a photo documentary project, and now it's expanding on the skill sharing like framework that I've created. Partially it's under Transilient because that work has been out in the world and there's a lot of interviews. Liz just shared them. And it does give me some credibility when asking for funding. And the other thing is, I made it into an LLC a few years ago. So it does make it easier to get funding. So I have a fiscal sponsor who can just like send me funds through my LLCs. It's kind of just like the means of giving myself credibility, but also it already has like a financial structure built into it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, you know what I'm thinking about, right, Liz? Maybe not.
Going to Houston?
No, kind of. I wonder, I'm so grateful first for Liz bringing you to us and you doing this for us and to learn more about your work. Thank you for coming. We're in Houston, Texas. Um, Liz, do you think it's okay to ask perspective on regional stuff? Like from some of our recent experience?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We, I hope it's okay. We came from okay, so we're poets, we're writers, right? We had a conference recently, and a lot of the people that came to the conference were from not the South, and there was a hubbub about whether trans folks would be safe in our city. And we were one of the people that I am an attendee and member of the conference, so they reached out to me and the other poet Keegan, my partner. We're like, what do you think? Are you gonna, and we were able to talk to them about the actual conditions of our city. And then Keegan did an awesome job reaching out to like the care networks here, the people that know the secret and what's going on and like trouble that's happening or not.
The actual trans community.
The actual trans community. And then we reported back to the org. And then we got to enjoy. Well, and then what, Keegan?
Basically a panelist sort of talk about whether or not the conference should be in Houston at all. whether or not this is like a safe space for community and whether or not that's being questioned. And the person like was not there, so we couldn't actually like talk to them about
They
it.
just recorded audio and sent it.
Which also is kind of complicated.
Yeah, take a drink.
But it seemed like,
Was that ice too?
I guess maybe it's more of a question about like, how do you,
And what about? And then
what,
when we approached a board member about it, you know, they were like, well, I have friends that are trans and they're coming a very wannabe, a very wants to be supportive and loving, like loving
Yeah.
person. Who says, I have friends who are in the Bay Area who are coming to me who and they're trans people and they're really worried about coming to town. And I have people in other parts of the
then did not come.
and then did not come. And I love if you feel comfortable to talk about your experience because I feel kind of like I'm getting punched in the face and also exoticized. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I kept on trying to tell them, it feels like you're a neoliberal person talking about bombing Iraq into freedom.
Mhm.
Like that's also my reference and thinking about. I'm like, you don't understand. We're here. We're alive. We're telling you. The care networks are like it's safe. They can, of course, yes.
Right.
There hasn't been massive, widespread crackdowns or backlash, if there will be or not, but there isn't now. It's okay.
Right.
We did all that, and then we're like, what do you do? And then the board member's like, well, what do I do about my friends that are in the Bay Area? Do I not listen to them? They have a different experience. They're trans people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, how do you navigate the conversation, like within even trans people, of like, you are so like outside of the South, you're so convinced that this place is terrible because of the news.
It feels
And like in
colonial
some
to me.
ways, like in some ways, yes, obviously there are problems.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have different experiences. But if we in this area as trans folks are being like, no, we've checked it out.
hmm
You might not want to go to like X, but like this area is safe.
Mhm.
And they're still kind of like, no, 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 no. Let me tell you how dangerous it is. It's like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've had these conversations for many years. So uh, when I went to NYU, my master's thesis was on prison abolition in the South. So I had a lot of arguments with people around prison abolition first, and then how the South is this like dirty, like
hmm
um, cesspool of a place. And so, when I talk to other trans people, it is a little bit easier. What I always say to them is like, well, we're here, like there are trans people here, and by you avoiding this area or not coming here or putting money in the pockets of trans people here, you're only harming us more. A lot of us already live in poverty, or like you only see us in service industry positions, and like the only thing that's going to keep us afloat is like people coming here. And the it's not going to stop Congress. It's not going to change their views. It's not going to, by them not having people come there, they're just going to have Elon Musk come there and build a data center. Like they're going to keep getting the money they need to get. So I try to just differentiate it, and when talking to trans people, it's really easy for me to be like, if you really care about all trans people, particularly like marginalized ones, then you should care about people in the South, particularly people in the South. I also like to throw in people like in middle area, like Wyoming. It's
hmm
really it's really hard to be trans there as well. But
Yeah.
um, there's that. And then I've talked to people who are like claiming to not come to areas who aren't trans and are neoliberal. And I've seen, I mean, after Helene, I was in Asheville and I was stuck there, but I would go to the hospital and like post things on the internet. People would leave comments like, this is what you get, this is what you deserve for voting red, this is what North Carolina gets, like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And a lot of this film is to combat that. I think it's just a long history of classism and racism, and
Yeah, because we're very diverse in
we're
Houston.
extremely diverse. The largest LGBTQ population is in the Southeast. The largest Black population is in the Southeast. Um, and so, the media has fed them things. A book I recommend reading is 400 Years of White Trash. And it kind of goes into the like themes that happened pre-Civil War about the South. And that language of like hillbilly and redneck was created by like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune, like in the 1800s, right? It has always kind of demonized people here. Yes, due to classism was such a massive thing. I mean, like the United States is a project of England, so obviously it's a classist base to start with. But it was also just like kind of fighting for industry, like
Hmm.
it was more about we want to industrialize and you all use slave labor, and that's really why we want to bastardize you. And racism was real too. So if you were a white person and you were poor, you were like scum of the earth, like that has always just been there, and the media has just continued to fulfill it. And so a lot of my work Transilient originally was to change how people saw trans people, and my work now is to change how people see the South. And I'm using our community because it's a community I'm a part of and feel comfortable working with to showcase the work we do, because we are, as queer people in the South, far more intersectional than queer people in New York or Chicago where I lived, in terms of like after Helene giving people with MAGA hats food and water from us. You wouldn't see that in New York. You know what I'm saying? Like we have a different kind of relationship to each other and what we owe to each other. Um, and I think I would bring that up. If you can find resources, there's a film called Hillbilly that's a really great documentary that's about Appalachia in particular, but it goes really into the media representation of Appalachia, but it could be used across the South. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Um,
Yeah.
that book was a good one too. I think I would just point people, if they're interested, if they're supposedly liberal or whatever, to
Hmm.
read and get educated. And it's just a shame. It's a really painful thing that we all have to experience, and there's a lot of shame in it. I think, there was a couple interviews I did in Memphis, and just when I would ask people like, why do you stay? Like, like two people came to tears, like just being asked about staying. Like they've just never been asked about staying before. No one's ever thought about it or why it's good. And I don't think we realize how much pent-up shame there is, even though we stay and we fight and we love it, but it's
Mhm.
still there. It's like still lingering. And I just want to help remove that. And yeah, I'll try to think of other resources too that I've read, that I can send to y'all.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
Yeah.
It- We know, like Liz is part of the Southern queer community. You were doing work, and they're doing this from afar.
Mhm.
They're trashing. They're just it's disparaging, and we're fighting out. It's just
Yeah.
it's so and it's invisible. I tried so many ways to put it into a new colonial perspective and like imagine you're European descendant and you're going into a neighborhood where the music makes you nervous and or your friend is and you know that it's safe and you have to tell your European descendant friend it's okay, it's safe. Like I
Mhm.
know this neighborhood, I know these people and they're like no, it's not safe. It's not safe. And I
Right.
tried everything I could to do like the metaphor, the analogy.
Like see it in a different situation where you
Yeah.
would see this is messed up.
Like people want to bomb Iran into feminism,
Yeah.
and it's still like, and I'm dealing with people of color, you know, and they don't. It doesn't click. People who
No.
understand the poisons of colonialism and imperialism is like the they don't get it.
Mhm.
So very grateful.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry that you're experiencing that. And I know Texas has really had the brunt of it, and you all have had your own recent climate crisis happen, and a lot of loss occurred. And did y'all know Rachel Gonzalez, the Gonzalez family in Austin, or I'm sorry, Dallas? She was like a mama bear and part of like the trans moms of trans kids.
Oh yeah.
And Rachel's one of my best friends, and her daughter is now 14, but like they're Latina and trans, and they did leave. They decided to leave, and I respected that. And it was really heartbreaking to witness. It was, they didn't want to leave. They've been here fighting for so long. They've put so much work and energy and met with so many legislators. Rachel and her family never put Libby in the front either. Like her brothers and sisters would come and talk to Congress. They've been in every media outlet you can think of, and they still felt like they had to leave. And partially it's because they were in every media outlet you can think of. They made themselves really, really visible, and I'm grateful for that every day. But I think there's a lot going on. I think people are seeing things like that happening, and then also like trying to understand why we would stay. So circumstances are just different for everybody, and I think it's just people who aren't a part of the South just shouldn't really have that much of an opinion, honestly. You can just
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Thank
see
you
that
so
Gwen. Oh, thank you.
I
I
just
see
said
that
thank you.
Gwen. I see that Gwen has her hand up, and also Brennan has come off of camera. Would you like to ask a question too, Brennan? Okay, after Gwen, fantastic. Thank you. And thank you,
Okay.
Ollie and Keegan.
Yeah. Well, what y'all just said, really just reminds me of so many things I've heard, and probably exactly what gets to the heart of your film, Basil, of the challenges of being trans in the South, because even though there are a lot of things to celebrate, there are also challenges, but it's very frustrating to have an outsider try to tell you, explain it to you. But I kind of lost my train of thought. But I wanted to ask you, Basil, if you're ever heard of Sweet Tea on Asheville FM, if you would be interested in being interviewed, if
oh
you have a
yeah,
moment.
I've definitely heard of it. I follow Asheville FM on Instagram, so I'd be very happy to be interviewed.
Okay, I can get you in contact with those people because I think like I had kind of heard of your organization before, like Transilient, but I didn't know that you were doing this documentary, which I think is so pertinent. So yeah, I would love to get you connected with those guys.
Thank you. That'd be excellent.
Thanks, Gwen. Hi, Brennan.
Yeah, yeah, it's been cool to hear about the upcoming projects and past projects. Um, in I think 2022, I was the artist in residence for Campaign for Southern Equality and got to do a project called Expansive, and I got to photograph and interview trans people in Asheville and do a gallery show. And then this year or next year, I'm trying to do some travel in the Southeast and want to do more um interviews and photographs. And um I guess one thing that like has come up for me that came up the gallery show was like luckily able to get like a fair amount of media coverage, and we had really good turnout. And I think I'm really grateful that like it was safe and we didn't like nothing happened. But I remember like last minute in the last week being like, man, I really didn't think about like, you know, um this balance between like trans people being seen
Mhm.
and safety. It's like with doing like this work, um, yeah, I get worried sometimes about like kind of making a little collection of the coolest trans people, you know. And I'm just wondering like if y'all have those conversations and what you think about it. And obviously there's like a risk all the times, but if there's anything like that y'all have worked in to like keep people anonymous or
Yeah, I've done a few different things. I was asked to surprisingly do a show at Texas A&M and like a artist workshop with like folks who were going to school there who were, most of them were queer, but they also wanted me to shoot photos of trans people throughout campus. And as you all might be aware, Texas A&M is not the most affirming place. So there were people who wanted to stay anonymous, and one person I just shot their hands, like holding flowers. Another person had talked about like their idea of respect. We didn't use their name, and I like made a photo out of different letters that spelled respect because that's like what felt like they were going after, and it was the most representative thing. And they were like letters a part of Texas A&M University campus, so it was kind of also like they're here. I'm not going to show you their face, but like they're here and they're a part of your community. I've let people use any name they want. They never have to give me their real name. Um, Currently, my security plan on the ground is that no one needs to know why I'm there. If anyone asks, I just lie and say I'm doing like a best of the South for BuzzFeed or Bitter Southerner or something. Like, like this is nothing. Like I'm just a YouTuber, I'm not here. Like, and it works. And so there's ways to definitely go about it. And I'd be happily how like want to help you in any way. The other thing is I've had people ask to have their work taken down from the site and I've just taken it down. Either they feel like they don't look the way that they once did or they got a new job. And I just remove it from the collection and I don't use it in showings or in like promotional work or anything. So the other thing too is, yeah, I guess just I really offer from the get-go, even though it sounds patronizing, I think sometimes, just informed consent. Like I like to let people know, I'm like, social media is an ugly place. I try to keep it clean, but if I put your face on, Transilient's Instagram, someone might say something mean, you might see it. I just want to let you know. I try to like tell them every possible outcome, even if they already know it. And just saying it out loud gives it power, and then they can really make a true decision by having like a verbal conversation with me face to face about it. So that's like the best we can do right now. But I'd be happy to also brainstorm with you and figure out other things. Um, and of course, like I love your work and I saw Expansive and I thought it was really beautiful. Um, and I think you would do an amazing job. Um, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. I appreciate it. I'm gonna ask another question. What's what's like your approach to interviews? Um, yeah, like what kind of interview style do you use and like how do you make people feel comfortable, stuff like that?
I think that I really leave it up to their terms. Um, some people want to be directed, like they are too overwhelmed by the idea of like finding a place to meet or like whatever. But most people have a concept of what feels safe to them and what feels good to them. So with Transilient, it was very much um, about the person more than I think places, but it was still like present. Like I wanted to show that everyone was everywhere, but it was really about them. So there were so many people I met who were like, I'm boring. I have nothing to say. There's no, I just work at Starbucks. I got nothing going on. And after you get them talking and just listen and really, when they answer a question, you listen intently and then expound on it. Eventually, I had people talking who wouldn't stop talking after an hour. They like never, we were like best friends. They didn't want me to leave. It was like a good experience, whatever. So I think it's just, yeah, I think letting people know that they're in control of the conversation, but that they're also really important, and that they're very, very valid, and um, that their lives are worthy.
Thank you so much for these wonderful questions as well as answers. I have, I guess, maybe a follow-up question. in regards to teaching people about the art of storytelling and sharing their stories, I remember that you said earlier in the presentation that you have kind of like a teaching um, initiative as well as teaching people about storytelling. And I was wondering if you ever do like webinars about storytelling, or is this just like a one-on-one situation when you're helping people develop their like leadership skills as well as their storytelling skills?
I want to do webinars. I haven't done it before. So previously, with Transilient, I would always bring on like um, Southern trans people who didn't have like a traditional education, as film and storytelling and media is like a very gatekeepy type of environment. And just like allowing them to get experience, build a portfolio, be paid. Um, I would have to be pretty patient and like give a lot of direction, but it always ended up being such a cool experience. I'd much rather work with people who are learning and flexible and excited than people who like sometimes come along with egos. But like there are two other people who I'm working with on Fixin' to Stay, Michaela and RBJ, who have a lot of experience and are also into the teaching model. Like that's what they're like. I told them coming on board, like that's what we're doing, and they're down with it, so that's part of it. And then so like with Fixing to Stay, we have two fellows now who um are kind of breaking into film and like are 20 and 21 years old. um One of them, when I brought them to Memphis, was their first time ever getting on an airplane or leaving Western North Carolina. It was like a really big time for them. So, you know, that's part of it. And then the other part is like, I do want to do storytelling stuff. I've done panels and I've like spoken like at universities and stuff, but I really do want to offer webinars.
All right. Well, I hope that that is in the future, the near future even. Was also wondering, you were mentioning how sharing your own personal story, um, along with the stories from other people involved with Transilient, helped you get on the radar of media. And I was wondering, what did that entail when you wanted to catch their attention? Like, did you send an email directly to like an editor in chief, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I recommend. Yeah, sometimes, well, at the time I had much less money. I was a barista and I would use this thing called Rocket Reach, and I would just make fake emails over and over and over to their lead gen. It's a lead gen website. So I would search for the editor at BuzzFeed and I'd find their LinkedIn and I'd take their LinkedIn and put it into this website. Then I'd get their email. Then I'd email them. Be like, hi, I'm Basil and this is a project I'm working on. And this is a little bit about me. Do you want to cover it? And it worked. And it still works. It's just a lot of hard work, like find editors, search them. You also want to get people who are going to represent the work well. And you don't always know, so like for instance, I did a photo essay for Refinery 29 after I got bottom surgery, and one of the editors was awesome, but the other one at the end of it wanted me to send them a photo of my genitals after I'd had surgery, you know. And I said no, of course, but like you're just kind of like on the whim sometimes of editors and how things are gonna go. But that's how I did it. I'd approach them, and then over the years, you build a relationship with writers and editors, and it's easier to reach out.
Thank you very much. This was all really helpful. And I also want to extend an invitation if you ever want to do an intentional webinar with a collaboration for Southern Quality Studios, please let me know because I'd love to have you again as a collaborator and co-conspirator for getting our stories out towards the goal of liberation for all. and also having people recognize the humanity of us as well as the impact that
Yeah,
they can
I would love
produce. Okay, thank you. I've started to ramble a little bit. So I
that.
was wondering, does anybody have any other questions for Basil? And also just want to remind folks that we have in the chat the link to We Are Transilient, which has more information about fixing this day as well as Transilient hashtag more than trans. Um, and if nobody has additional questions, I also wanted to ask Basil if you had any questions for us or if you wanted to share anything else with us.
Yeah, in the chat, I'm about to put my email and my personal website. Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. I think, if anyone wanted to give feedback on what I've told you about Fixin, I would definitely take that as we're still in very early ideation and building of it.
So you're working. Oh, I thought it was done. Oh.
We're in development. So we just filmed in Asheville and Memphis and are going to create a reel, and that's going to help us hopefully get funding. There's a few people who have reached out who want to help after the reel's done. So hopefully we'll be in full production by summer of 2026.
If you need a Houston hookup like to the community here, we could do it. We have one of the remaining. We could connect them to Maria.
Megan.
You're talking to the media and arts
No.
award winning. I
Don't say that.
just remembered LGBTQ plus trans like a Chamber of Commerce winner. This we could hook you up. This one knows.
Yeah, we definitely do. Texas is a part of it. The two main storylines will go through Memphis and Asheville, but Texas is on the docket as well as Alabama, and potentially going home to where I'm from in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with it. I also know House Rep Lauren Simmons, and she used to be my union rep at NDWA where I worked for a while. But I don't know anyone else in Houston, so I would love the connections and I'd love to meet y'all in person.
Yeah, like there's a trans benefit that happens like a benefit, a banquet. There we go. And everybody's gathered.
Trans unity
Something
banquet.
Trans unity.
I don't remember all the words.
But I mean, there's a whole community here, and we can connect you to that population. There'll be varying ages too. And you've been here. And we also have one of the rare remaining, like, I guess it began as a lesbian bar, but of course everyone is welcome.
Yeah.
And
That's
Liz
awesome.
it's real. Liz can testify to it.
That's awesome.
Liz has shimmied at Pearl before.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I was just there last week, so it's not a distant memory. And I shimmied, and then I went to the patio and I said, "You youngsters, you enjoy yourself and you shimmying." But yeah, Houston is absolutely awesome. And oh, before I forget, I was wondering how many people are you hoping to include in this in the film?
For the profiles, we're gonna probably include 2 in Asheville and 2 in Memphis, and then also like do shorter interviews with organizers and like say we do go to Texas and Alabama, um, to kind of like pull in when talking about specific subject matter, or if one of our profiles is like, yeah, there's a lot of work happening, and then we go to TKO Alabama or whatever. And so it's probably 2 per state, and then like a sprinkling of like whoever wants to share, and of course like put people in B-roll. And also like the interviews we're collecting too are like going to be a part of a social campaign. A lot of funders like to see a social campaign along with a film, which is like kind of a lot to ask, but they do like to see that. So the social campaign is like asking people why they stay and what people get wrong about the South. So there's that filming as well.
Okay, this is excellent to know. And Basil, I have one final question for me at least. And basically, with this work of carrying so many stories and experiences, what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Yeah, so I have a Shakti mat, and it's I talked to Liz about this earlier. It's the spiked mat that it's a bed of spikes that you lay on for acupressure. I meditate. I lost my 16-year-old dog, passed away last year, and when I moved back to Asheville, I'm planning to get a puppy, which I'm really, really excited about. Um, I'm in very close contact with my niece and my nephew in South Carolina. We FaceTime all the time. And yeah, I just, try to make sure that I'm listening to my breathing and how I feel. And I have been staying off social media a little bit. It's just been kind of a rough space. And yeah, I think that's it. I got a bike, so I'm going to start biking more.
I really appreciate you, Basil, and I appreciate everybody else for being here. You made the space very special, and I appreciate all of y'all, and I'm grateful that you are here. And I look forward to the next time we are able to be connected.
Thanks, y'all. So nice to meet you. Thank you again, Liz.